Welcome to The Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here today because we are tackling one of the most critical, high yield, and frankly, fascinating topics in pediatric care. We're going to look at the infant body through a framework I like to call the vulnerable vessel. Basically, we'll be demystifying exactly why pediatric fluid dynamics are just so incredibly delicate and why these concepts are, for sure, highly testable. Okay, let's just dive right into this. Think about this real-world clinical scenario for a second. Why does a simple stomach bug, something that might just inconvenience an adult for a day, threaten an infant's life so much faster? I mean, in adults, a bit of vomiting or diarrhea is a nuisance, but in an infant, it's literally a ticking clock. The stakes here are life or death, and to understand exactly why, we really have to look closely at their unique physiology. So here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with pediatric vulnerability, master the math of maintenance fluids, explore the three types of dehydration, look at clinical signs, water intoxication, and finally, generalized edema. All right, Section 1, the pediatric vulnerability. The sheer scale of the physiological differences between infants and adults is just staggering. At birth, an infant's body weight is composed of the highest percentage of total body water they will ever have. But it's not just the amount of water, it's where it's located. Infants have a much larger proportion of extracellular fluid, or ECF, relative to the fluid inside their cells. And here's the kicker. ECF is lost much more readily than intracellular fluid. Now couple that with a massive body surface area to weight ratio and a much higher metabolic rate, and infants are constantly, and I mean constantly, losing significant amounts of fluid through their skin and rapid breathing. That's what we call insensible fluid loss. And this brings us to the absolutely crucial rule of two. If you remember literally only one number today, make it this one. An infant's kidneys are really immature. They cannot fully concentrate urine or effectively conserve sodium until the child is approximately 2 years old. So before age 2, if they start losing fluid, their kidneys simply can't compensate to hold on to water and electrolytes the way your or my kidneys would. This single maturational fact explains exactly why infants dehydrate so quickly. Because of this intense vulnerability, we've got to be incredibly precise when giving fluids, which brings us to Section 2, calculating maintenance fluids. Mastering the Holiday Sager method is an absolute must. Fluid requirements are broken down into 3 strict weight tiers. For the first 10 kilograms of a child's weight, they need 100 milliliters per kilogram. For the next 10 kilograms, you add 50 milliliters for each of those kilos. And for every single kilogram over 20, you add 20 milliliters. Now listen, the biggest mistake you can make here is taking a child's total weight and multiplying it by just one of these numbers. You absolutely must break the weight down into these specific buckets. Let's actually walk through a 32-kilogram worked example together so you can clearly visualize the math. Step 1. We take the first 10 kilos of that child. 10 times 100 is 1,000 milliliters. Step 2. We take the next 10 kilos. 10 times 50 is 500 milliliters. Step 3. Okay, so we have 12 kilos left over to get to 32. So 12 times 20 is 240 milliliters. Finally, step 4, just add them all up. 1,000 plus 500 plus 240 gives us exactly 1,740 milliliters required over 24 hours. See, it's systematic, it's tiered, and it's totally essential for safe practice. Now, to know if our maintenance fluids are actually working, we've got to monitor output. Our gold standard pediatric benchmark is 1 to 2 mils per kilogram per hour. Seriously, commit this to memory. Anytime you're evaluating if a pediatric patient is adequately hydrated, this is the exact clinical metric you use to judge their kidney perfusion and fluid status. Now that we know how to maintain the balance, let's look at what happens when that balance completely breaks down. Section 3, the types of dehydration. Dehydration isn't just about losing water, right? It's about the relationship between water and sodium and how that creates an osmotic pull between fluid compartments. Isotonic dehydration is the most common one. Water and sodium are lost equally, so blood sodium stays normal, but circulating volume drops, creating a shock risk. But things get way more complex and dangerous with hypotonic and hypertonic dehydration. Let's look at hypotonic dehydration first. This one triggers a massive safety alert. In hypotonic dehydration, the child actually loses more sodium than water. Because the blood becomes relatively dilute, osmosis basically forces water to flee the extracellular space and rush into the more concentrated cells. This means the circulating blood volume plummets dangerously fast. So hypotonic dehydration carries the absolute worst shock risk for the smallest amount of total fluid lost. On the flip side, we have hypertonic dehydration, which is clinically considered the most dangerous type overall.
Here, water loss exceeds sodium loss. The blood becomes highly concentrated, aggressively pulling water out of the cells and into the bloodstream. Now, if you try to replenish this child's fluids too quickly, water will just flood right back into those dehydrated cells. If this happens in the brain, it causes life-threatening cerebral edema. You must correct hypertonic dehydration incredibly slowly.
So understanding these shifts is vital. But how does this actually present at the bedside? Let's move to section 4, spotting dehydration signs. All right, let's dispel one of the most dangerous myths in pediatric care right now. A lot of people mistakenly wait for a child's blood pressure to drop to diagnose severe dehydration or shock. Do not fall into this trap. Tachycardia, an elevated heart rate, is your very first early warning sign. The infant body is incredibly good at clamping down blood vessels to maintain pressure. If you're seeing hypotension, the child is already in a late-stage decompensating crisis. Always look at the heart rate first. Okay, let's pivot to the total opposite end of the fluid spectrum. Section 5, water intoxication risks. Remember our vulnerable vessel framework? Well, infants have an immature thirst mechanism. They literally don't know when to stop drinking. And because their glomerular filtration rate is low, they can't pee out excess water fast enough. A huge, vital screening point here is socioeconomic. A major cause of water intoxication is families over-diluting infant formula to stretch their supply because of financial strain. We also see this when infants swallow too much pool water during early swim lessons. It's a silent threat. And this brings us to the core mechanical danger of a hyponatremic seizure. When too much free water dilutes the blood sodium levels, water forcefully shifts into the tissues to find balance. But the really terrifying part is that water moves into brain tissue significantly faster than sodium can move out. This causes swelling in the brain, triggering irritability and eventually life-threatening hyponatremic seizures. A child experiencing this might outwardly appear perfectly well hydrated or, even a bit puffy, all while enduring a massive neurological emergency. This actually brings us perfectly to our final concept, Section 6, Understanding Generalized Edema. Let's trace this pathophysiological chain of events step by step because it's completely foundational for understanding renal issues. Think of it like a domino effect. Step 1, the basement membrane in the kidneys gets damaged and inappropriately leaks protein, specifically albumin, into the urine. Step 2, because albumin is lost, serum albumin levels in the blood plummet. Step 3, albumin acts like a sponge, right? It holds water inside the blood vessels. Without it, plasma colloidal osmotic pressure drops drastically. Step 4, normal hydrostatic pressure now simply pushes fluid right out of the vessels and into the interstitial tissues, causing visible swelling. And finally, step 5, because the fluid has leaked out, the actual volume of fluid inside the blood vessels drops, causing hypovolemia. And this leads us to a really cruel physiological irony that I call the edema paradox. The body senses that the intravascular blood volume has dropped. Panicking, the kidneys activate the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, basically hoarding extra sodium and water in a desperate attempt to refill those blood vessels. But because there's still no albumin to hold that new water in the vessels, it simply leaks right out into the tissues again, making the generalized swelling even worse. It is a vicious, compounding cycle. Wow, okay, we've covered incredible ground today, from the fragile baseline of pediatric total body water through the precise math of the Holiday-Sager method to the complex fluid shifts in dehydration, water intoxication, and edema. But I want to leave you with this final, really provocative thought. If an infant's fluid balance is so easily tipped by their very own physiological immaturity, how can we take these complex concepts, like spotting tachycardia before hypotension, or understanding the hidden dangers of diluting formula, and better empower parents to monitor these shifts at home before they ever become a hospital crisis? The truest mastery of this material isn't just knowing the physiology, right? It's translating it to save vulnerable vessels every single day. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.